Continuing with changes in the cryosphere, next we're going to talk about glaciers. So glaciers are those kind of like rivers of ice that are in the mountains. Um, and so I grew up in the Southeast, and I always thought that glaciers were like super exotic. There weren't very many of them. They were way high elevation. I was never going to see one. And then I moved to Seattle, Washington, and I realized, oh no, like people can just hike up to glaciers. They're actually, uh, we have tons of glaciers in the US. So one of the places with glaciers where I used to live was Mount Rainier, which was right out of Seattle, and it has the Nisqually Glacier on it. And we used to take field trips out to the Nisqually Glacier. And my professor, who had been there for a while, I think about 20, 30 years, said that when he first started taking field trips to this glacier, they could park on the road and just look at the glacier, right? It was right there in front of them. But over the years, over the decades, we would still park on that same road. But by the time I got there, we could no longer see the glacier, right? He would say, if you look up here and if you could look around the bend, it would be there. But we couldn't see that glacier anymore. Instead, the only way I could see that glacier would be to drive up to the top and hike to go see that glacier as shown in this figure, right? So glaciers are everywhere. You should definitely go see one, but know that they are melting. So it's getting harder and harder to go see one. So almost all glaciers worldwide have continued to shrink, and the current glaciers' extent are out of balance with current climatic conditions. And what I mean by that is that imagine putting an ice cube out on a hot sidewalk, right? It's not going to immediately melt. It might take a couple minutes to melt. The same thing's happening with our climate, right? Climate has warmed and the glaciers are melting, but it's going to take a little while for the glaciers to totally melt. So even if the global warming stopped right now, even if the temperature we were at right now stayed constant, the glaciers are still melting because they're still coming into equilibrium with modern temperatures. This is one of the reasons that even if we stopped global warming right now, the ocean would continue to rise because a lot of these glaciers and these ice sheets are contributing to sea level rise. And you can see that right now, glaciers are actually the largest contributor to sea level rise.